Hello, hello, hello. Hello guys, hope you guys are doing well. Today we're going to continue with JavaScript with a React journey. So I hope you guys will enjoy the video. Guys, just give me a moment for me to check the sound and those stuffs. Okay, hope you guys. So I'm back. So if you just joined live, today we're going to talk about continue with the JavaScript journey. Hope you guys will enjoy the React Live. So that being said, let us go full in. So if there's any problem with the sound or something like that, just let me know in the chat, and I'll try to like arrange it and stuff like that. Arrange it and with stuff like that. So you guys should give me again 5 minutes lad. So let me check again this sound stuff. now let us start a little bit with this React stuff. As I said, hello guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel. I am Alan. So I'm here to share as much value as I can through this life while learning React. So what can I really say here is that, so if there's any problem with the sound, something like that, don't miss to tell me in the chat below. So that being said, let me start quite frankly. So here's the chat. Here's what I'm supposed to do today. Let me reduce the chat. Okay, my noting. So basically the ways I'm always reasoning is that, okay. So now today we're going to learn about React state. Let me click back. So today we're going to learn about state, React state, hooks, and routing. Time stop. React state, root, and routing. So the first thing that we shall learn is working with state and responding to events in React. So basically here is it. We shall do the lecture, workshop, and do the lab. Afterward, we shall do effects, React effects, and so on and so forth. So we are doing yet actually now like this part 1. So that being said, let me start. So the technique that I want to use here is that it's saying that you guys should just give me a minute. Let me try something. I want to try a new learning technique that I read on this Twitter stuff. Here is it. Just cut it here. And ask ChatGPT to like. Okay, let's go. When facing a text, write one sentence automatically for each paragraph. Okay, one sentence at for each paragraph. The next one is from paragraph 3 onward, write a cumulative of 2 sentences summary. Okay, from that paragraph onward, write first paragraph previous plus current. Try to bring my mic upward. Yeah. Give me a minute so I can type better. Okay. Put this thing down. Okay. I think now it's better. I hope you guys are hearing. Okay. If there's any issue with the sound, just let me know so that I can fix it. Okay, nobody has texted. So now let us continue. Now, paragraph. The next one is always summarize what you truly understand. If you cannot write in your own, stop and think until you do it. Think, don't just read. Build for retention, passive reading, invest time efficiently, method slower. This method is slower at first but save time so later no cramming needed. Reject speed reading, apply practically. So what I would do here is that when I read a paragraph, I summarize it. Make sure I summarize it in my own words. So now let us start the learning journey. Copy this thing. Paste it inside my paste it inside my I don't even know where to paste it. Okay, now we can start the live. How to do event work in React. So let's take and write like the first paragraph. Let's say this is the first paragraph here. Event handling is an essential part of interactive website. Okay. React provides a powerful and a consistent way to handle through its synthetic event systems, which wrap around native events like click, okay, and submit you about in earlier lectures. The cross-platform wrapper ensures that the events work the same across all browsers, so there are no inconsistencies. Okay. Let's see how events work in React, so you can start using in your project. So let's say this is the first paragraph here. The summary of it is that okay, events are divided in native event So native event are, for example, keystroke, mouse click, whereas synthetic is a wrapper, let's say that, around native event. What do I think again? Okay, I think that's all. Okay, let's go on to the next paragraph. Let's see how events work in React so you can use in your project. So in React, event handlers. So in React, event handlers. Put this thing in front of me so that I can speak loud. So in React, event handlers. So event handlers. Okay, let me continue. Instead of in React, event handlers work in a similar way to native browser event, but with few tweaks. Instead of using lowercase attribute names like on click, on submit, okay, I see. Click, submit, keystroke, on click, on submit. We use the camel case like on click, on submit, okay. So what are these event attributes name, okay. On click, submit, or click attribute name. We are using camel case. In addition, instead of using strings to specify the kind of event, React expects a function for event handler. Okay. So okay, tell me that they're saying that this event attribute name are on click, like on click and on submit are event are function instead. So React expect function. So the event handler function is passed to the element as prop, and the event type like on click or on submit is used as an attribute in JSX. So here is a reminder on how to work with on how to work on how to work with a click event in regular HTML. Okay. So what I understood here is, let me see, second paragraph. Let's see. It's saying that there are event attribute names like on submit, or on click, but these same attributes are different in React. That is, they have they are spelled using the camel case conversion. That is, let's say, for example, on submit like this, or on click. So another difference is that React expects functions from addition to string React express functions on this for the event handler. Okay, that's it. So let's move on to the next one. Yes, it on click. Use the alert method. And here's how the same. Here's how you do the same in React. So when you pass it as prop, just set it up here. In this example, handle click logs is a message to console to the console when the user clicks on the button. So note that you don't need parentheses after handle clicked or in the on click. So attribute as you are passing a reference to the function, not calling it. So, okay, reference to the function, not calling it. Sure. Because what's the difference? Reference will just go to the function, whereas on click, whereas calling the function will run the function and eventually return something. Makes sense. So now the next one is in React, event handler functions usually start with a prefix handle to indicate that they are responsible in handling events like handle click or handle submit. Okay, that should be the name, the convention in React. So like conventions are like ways to write elements of the language. So normally so when we talk about handling event handler directly, we use the prefix handle. Makes more sense. When a user action is triggers an event, React passes the synthetic event object to the handler. So that's the difference. So in React, there's this synthetic event object. So I know that an object is something that an object represents an entity with attributes. Let me say that. Attribute. Okay. Now, what they're saying is that there's basically a synthetic object, event object. So the object represents simply the event. So I said before that there are two types of events. Let's say synthetic and native. That's it. So the most fun. So this object behaves much like a native event object in the vanilla JavaScript, providing properties like type, target, and current target. Okay. You can pass event as a parameter to the function to the handler function and lock it to the console to take a look at the structure. The structure, yes, it's okay. To prevent default behavior like browser refreshing on submit event, for example, you can call the prevent default method. Okay, prevent default method. Okay, you can also stop event from bubbling using the parent element by calling element event stop propagation. Okay, sometimes while handling special cases like delete and edit feature, you might want to pass extra data to an event handler. You can do this by wrapping the handler in an inline function. So delete one. Okay. This inline function, yes, it's click it, delete item. Prop. So eventually you just try and delete the item one. Okay. Now let's go on to the question. How does React handles event consistently across all browsers? By only using native browser events? No. By creating custom events for each browser? No. Through synthetic event system. So basically the system here in React is that, as I understood, is that you have done, you have handler functions that will help to triggers the action that have to occur after a button or an event has occurred. That's it. And this handler function has some special convention which are um, camel case, that written in camel case, and moreover that when this handler function are being used, like for example as props, we make sure that we are not calling the function, but we are instead giving a reference to that function. And we also talk about attributes, which are on click, on submit, and so on and so forth. So now let's go on to the next one. How can you prevent default behavior like a browser refresh in React? So okay, understand. So for example, browser refresh is like this. And when the browser is being refreshed, there's a default behavior. That's it. And the best way to do that is to use prevent default. By using stop propagation is to prevent event bubbling, so that the event should not bubble from the child to the parent, something like it. How does React differs from standard HTML in naming event attributes? React uses lowercase events like onClick and onSubmit, which is wrong. React uses camel case event like onClick and onSubmit with camel case. Camel case is that the first letter is always small. The first letter of the first word is small, is lowercase, and the first letter of the following words are in uppercase. Let's move on. What is a state and how does useState hook works? Okay. So, what am I going to do here? Okay, a state is one of the most important fundamentals of React and other front-end framework. It is like the brain of a component, meaning it holds information that can be changed over time and controls how the component behave and look. So let us look into the way into what state is and how you state hooks let you work with it. So now we are talking about state. Bold React state. So now they say a state represents the dynamic data in your React component, like the value from the user app or data fetch from the API or an item in the to-do list. So whenever the state changes, the React renders the component without reloading the page to reflect those changes in the user's interface. So this reactivity makes your app interactive. So whenever the state changes, re-renders the component without reloading the whole page. So that's very interesting. So let me just note it. So React. So when it says state, we speak of dynamic data. Dynamic data. So which means the data changes with time, with respect to time. So respect to time, that's the first concept. See, now they're telling us that if there is a change, if the state changes, React re-renders the component change without, so that's very important, reloading the whole page. That's it. So basically that part is very important, without reloading the whole page. Reloading the whole page. And this leads to make sure that the app is more reactive. The interactivity, it makes the app more interactive, something like that. So we use the hook use state. It's a function that lets you to declare states and variables in functional components. So before hooks, you could only use state in class components, but with the introduction of hooks since React 16.8, you can use state. You can use state in functional component by using the useState hook. So to use the useState hook, you just follow this thing: import from React, or you can also import the whole library of React. Here is how you can declare a state variable when you import useState. So that's it, the state variable and the set2state function. Good. And here's how you can declare a state variable when you import React. Okay. So you see the difference here is with this React stuff, and here is useState. So in state variables, you have the following. So state variable, set state function, and initial value. Okay. Note that in React component is private. So state is private and it's isolated to each component instance. So this means that if you render the same component twice, the state component of one of those does not affect the other one. This also means that if you would like to share the state between components, then you will need to lift the state up to a common parent and pass it down as props. Okay, I understand. Another thing is that hooks must be called at the top level of a component just before the return keyword. Okay. Imports. Okay, yes, it has been. So yeah, basically it's a counter, increment and decrement. Pretty easy. Let's take another look. You can manage multiple pieces of state by calling use state hooks multiple times. So use state notification. Okay, understand the rest of the logic. You can also call the use state hook multiple times when managing multiple states that update separately, like forms, fields. Understand. For example, name, username, emails, sets. Okay. What's the use of this set again? I think it's a function. The setter function updates the state variable. So yeah, the state variable comes and updates. The initial value is the first, so it's the first value that's been called, that's been used. So okay, now let us continue. Say okay, now let's go to questions. Here was which of the version were hooks? In which version were hooks introduced, allowing state to be used in functional component? What does the state represent in React component? So dynamic data that triggers re-rendering, that triggers re-renders okay, when change. Only static data that does not change. I think it's this one. Which of the following is the correct way to work with use state hooks? This one is wrong. This one is also wrong because there's no this signs. It's not there. This one is between this one and this one. This one is also wrong because of this one. Because of this sign, symbols. That's not how we declare object. So I think it's this one. So now let's move on to the next one. Okay, now the thing is, do you find this live valuable? Yes. And I will subscribe. 40 people against. Okay, don't know what to say. Okay, now let's go. What is rendering in React and how are components displayed on the screen? Guys, you give me a minute. Let me try something. You guys should not forget to like the live, so that the algorithm, I'm talking to the people that are watching right now, so the algorithm should know what to do. So leave a like, something like this. It will be interesting and it will be a free way to support me. So in React, rendering is a process by which components appear in the user's interface using usually the browser. Okay, that's just a definition of rendering. So React takes all your JavaScript, CSS code, configures out how it should look, and then display it on the user's interface. So here's the user interface. So what the user basically sees is the user interface. The rendering process consists of 3 stages: trigger, render, and commit. So I knew about trigger, rendering, but committing I don't know about it. So let us take a look in more details. The trigger stage occurs when React detects that something has changed and that the user's interface needs to be updated. This change is often due to an update in a state or props. For instance, noticing that it's time for dinner can trigger you to go into the kitchen to start cooking. That's true. So in the counter example below, clicking the increment or the decrement button triggers React to show a new count of value. That's true, because as you can see here, when, for example, you click on the decrement button, this onClick attribute will run this function inside this arrow function, and this arrow function is inside the body of this arrow function. There's this set count function, and we know that the set count is a setter function which basically updates the current value or update the state variable. And the update here to do here is changing count, so reducing it to 1. So that's basically what is done here. So now let us continue. Once the trigger happens, React enters the render stage. Here React reevaluates your component and figures out what to display. To do this, React uses a lightweight copy of the real DOM. This is called the virtual DOM. Okay, interesting. This one is interesting. Virtual DOM is a lightweight copy of DOM. So DOM here represents is the domain. It's a domain object model. So basically, it's a very important concept to understand in HTML or in web development. So let's just take a look at it. Domain object model. Where is it? Is it domain object or am I wrong? Let me check again. HTML. People give me something. DOM tree. So domain object model. As you can see, yes, normally the thing is tree with tree, because it's a tree, has a tree-like structure. So basically here is it, the HTML, which is the root, and the head, the body, and other it, they are parents. They are children. So head is a parent of the children meta, the children link, and the child title. So basically that's a DOM. So the question is, how does React use virtual DOM? So basically here, React enters the render stage. So the render stage is important. Render stage. Here React reevaluates your component and figures out what to display. To do this, React uses a lightweight copy of the real DOM. So this is called the virtual DOM. With the virtual DOM, React can quickly check what needs to change in your component. So in the rendering stage, so React reevaluates my component and figures provide my evidence to figure whether there is also not to prepare them, because I want to say to figure out whether there is something to render, which is wrong, because if we are already in the render stage, that means that we have passed the trigger stage. So the trigger stage comes first, then after the rendering stage. So figures how to re-render the change component. I think that's how I understood it. The change component. That's it. So this, let's say what to render. So the question is what to render. So the question that we are trying to answer here is what to render. And to do that, to know what to render, so because if you want to render something after when you analyze something and you want to know whether what you have to render, there's a method. So to know that React uses basically the virtual DOM, which is a lightweight copy of DOM. And with the virtual DOM, React can quickly check what needs to change in the component. So it's like, okay, a trigger has occurred. Now React reevaluates your component. So now he wants to know which part of your component or of your code have to be re-rendered, and to know what part to re-render exactly, he uses a lightweight copy of the real DOM, which is called the virtual DOM, and check what needs to be re-rendered. That's it. So it's just a copy of the real DOM, and inside that copy, there's something that may indicate which part of the component to be which component to render. So think of this stage as the point where you are in the kitchen and you have gathered your ingredients and you cook your dinner. So for the counter component, guys, give me a minute. So for the counter component, the render stage is the point where React runs the functions again with the new count value. So React recalculates the h1 part of the component React recalculate what the h1 tag part of the component should look like based on the update count value, but you won't see any changes on the screen until the next stage, commit. Okay, so rendering is just like calculating. It's about calculating. I didn't pretty understand. We need really understand this thing. Let's understand it again. Let's try again. For the counter component, the render stage is a point where React runs the function again with the new count value. Okay. React runs the function again with the new count value. So, okay, with the help of the virtual DOM, React recalculate what the h1 part of the component should look like based on the updated value. So basically, I understand very well. So trigger, render, and commit. That's how we commit. So to make this happen, React compares the virtual DOM to the actual DOM. Okay. Now here's it. The commit stage is where React takes the prepared changes from the virtual DOM and applies it to the real DOM. Okay. In other words, this is the stage where you see the final result on the screen. To make this happen, React compares the virtual DOM to the actual DOM, identifies only the parts that need updates, and applies those changes to the real DOM to update the user interface. So basically, you can think of this stage as the point where you serve the food you cooked, making it visible, just like React does when it commits updates to the actual DOM. So as for the counter component, the commit stage is the point in which the new count value is applied to the h1 element, and you can see the change on the page. So these three processes are extremely fast because React minimizes direct DOM manipulation by calculating changes first in the virtual DOM, then it updated only the part that need to change in the real DOM. Okay, I understand. Calculate changes in the virtual DOM. Update only the part that need to change in the real DOM. So now let us answer these questions very fast. What are the three stages of rendering process? Which technology does React use to perfect the render stage by efficiently calculating the changes? What happens during the commit stage in React rendering process? React prepares changes in the virtual DOM. React applies changes to from the virtual DOM to the real DOM. That's true, and that's the reason why React is fast. So they say it's extremely fast because it minimizes direct DOM manipulation. So that I need to induce that the conclusion is that direct DOM manipulation is slow. Understand? I see. So let me check the answer. Correct. So now let me check a bit if somebody wrote something in the chat. We had 50%, 6 people answer the quiz. So thank you guys. There's 3 people that find this variable. Okay. Guys, give me a minute. I'm coming back. So now let us continue. How do you update object state in React? So how do you update object state in React? Very good question. So let me just create again so that we don't have, let me create space here. from there's a problem. There is a problem, so let me just run the app again. So let me try again. I don't know why this thing is behaving like a type. Let me just copy my notes then. Yeah, I'll try again. Let me choose another color. Let me say green. Close this guy. Just continue. Okay, let me try. So the first keyword to know here is what are objects? So as I said, objects represent entity in programming. So basically, for example, as I know, let's declare an object, let's say person. I forgot about it, but you're using JavaScript. Name of the person is I think is a key. Let's say Alan. Age, let's say 30. And let's say height 2.3. That's an object. So now the question is that how do we update object? So basically, how do we change object, change data in object, So normally, if you are not using state to change the data, we just say take the person, the object person, and we say name, and we just change it. Say, let me check if somebody wrote something. Let's say grave keeper. Grave keeper is a little bit funny. Let's say grave keeper. That's it. That's how we change, update object. So now the question is how to do that in React. So now let us continue. Okay, React creates state as immutable. Okay, meaning it should not be modified directly. So immutable is something that cannot be modified. And another example is string. So a string is a data type. Let's say name. Right. So this string is immutable, so it cannot be changed directly. So let us look at what happens if you try to change objects in React directly and then dive in the correct way to do it. So let's say you have to, let's say you have an object in your component state that represent user's profile, and you want to use the user to update their age, as I said it here. So basically, the example with user is always with person is always the best example. So now, yes, let's try and explain it what is here. So basically, here's the import, which is used to import the function or the use state hook from the library React. And this is a component. What's a component? I think, yeah, function profile. The function profile is a component. It's a React component. So inside it, there is this hook. There's this use state. So user is a initial variable. User, sorry, is the state variable, and set user is a setter function. I think that's it. Yeah, it's a setter function. And use state, and inside use state there's this initial value, which is represented as an object. So object with name, age, and city. So that's it. And underneath it, there's this function, arrow function, that is used to change directly the user age. And I think that here's the error, because it accesses directly the object, because the object user, because don't forget that user represents this object, and it changes to the target value. So to the target, to the value of the event, let's say that. Because if you see very well, update user's age, and you see that there's handle on change age, hand on change. So input, so this is an input field. So when we enter the new age, it will directly update with the herb of this function, basically. So that's it. So now let us continue and eventually export. Eventually, when you always create when you create a component, you have to export it by default. So this code will not work because you directly modified use age, and where's the direct modification? This here is it here. Property. Even though console user will show the new age in the console, React won't re-render the component to show it in the user interface because you didn't use the setter function. You set user. That's it. Okay, I understand. Basically, if you want to change something in the state, so you want to change a value in the state, you have to use the setter function. You don't have to create your own function to change it. I don't know if you understand. So that's the reason why when we were seeing this counter, by the counter example, we had to we had to use the set counter function. So that's the setter function to update the counter. So to update the state, we didn't have to create another function for it. So that's basically what is being said here. So to update an object directly in the state, you need to use the setter function to create a new object with the updated value. For example, here's it. So here's the event. So the event that we want to catch here is change on change. So here's it here, and we basically create a new object, and inside that object we create an attribute, a key with the value from the event. So basically the value that have been entered in the field, basically the value that have been entered in the input field. So that works because if you look at the page now, that works, sorry. But if you look at the page now, the user's age gets updated by the change value, but the value, sorry, but the value for the name and city are lost. Okay, that's true. Because so that is we have to re-render it. Basically, that's just it. We have to re-render it, and yeah, I understand now. It makes a little bit of sense. Guys, you just give me again a minute. Let me think this thing through. Hmm. Just a minute. I'm trying to do something here. Hello, Vera, welcome. So I'm really happy to have you here. I am from Germany. How are you doing? Do you know anything about React and so on and so forth? So I really hope you enjoy the life. So we shall restart back. Ba, ba, ba. Okay, now let us continue. Okay, now let us continue. Sorry guys, I had to do some things important. So now let us continue. So as I was saying, we have to use the set users to update state state variables in React. So that works if you are, but so, the thing here is that it was working, but we shall not see anything about user name and age. So basically that's the problem. Guys, you give me a minute. Okay, let's move on. So now basically the thing here is to like do it like this. And you see here is object destructuring. So now to do this you can pass a special function called updated function. I don't know what's updated function. An updater function, sorry, to your set function set user, setter function set user. So okay, let me try again. Yeah, it's okay. Previous state, previous user, previous state. Basically I understand what they're doing here. Now they're telling me that okay, handle city change, handle name change, doing the same thing. So just remove this thing, it's just the same thing, or you can combine into a single setter function. So for example, here's this variable name and value setter, and you take the previous one, change just the name and the value. Okay, it's clearer. So now let's go on to the question. How does React treat state in component? As mutable, allowing run; as immutable, meaning it should not be modified directly. That's it. State should not be modified directly. How should you update an object stored in React state? Use the setter function to create a new object. Okay. Modify the object directly in state. Wrong, because states are immutable, and if you create a state with an object as the initial value, eventually that state represents the object, which is wrong. That state represents the object, and therefore we cannot modify the object directly. So let us continue. How should you update an object stored in? So use the assign. We didn't even talk about this assign, so eventually it's wrong. Use the push method, which is also wrong, because eventually in object, when you're using object, so object, you cannot use a push function. So a push function just help us to push function method, let's say, that help us to push an array and an element in an array, and where with, let's say, with the position, let's say at the last position of an array, let's say that, and we don't use it. It's not a function that can be used in objects. So the only way that we can use push function in an object is when we want to push an element. Sorry, we want to push an element in an array of objects, let's say, and therefore the element that you're pushing is an object, so therefore you can use push. So basically here you cannot use it. So the next one is to modify the object directly in state, which is wrong. The correct answer is to use the setup function to create a new object. Basically, that's it. So new object means that the concept of new, you have to understand it. For example, say here's an object, let's say all object. It has this structure and this one. A new object is when we create, so when we create something again, that's when we talk about new object. So use, and eventually that's what's happening. So let me just show you guys. For example, in these 100 changes, we basically create a new object here. Here's it here. So this is a new object, which is not the same as this initial state, which is basically an object. So that's the answer. And the last answer, the last question here is, what is the setter function in this code? The setter function is set user. Set user. Let's move forward. How do you update arrays in state? Okay. The question is, what is an array? An array is a data structure that helps us to store elements. That helps us to store data in a linear and organized ordered way. So the data, or let's say the elements stored, are organized with the help of an index, which represents the position of an element in the array. That's it. So the question is, how do we update arrays? So we already know that states are immutable, so therefore we cannot directly access the array with the help of these functions like pop or spice and so on and so forth. So let us read it through. So in React, state is treated as immutable, so it can recognize changes and make the proper updates to the user. Okay, I don't pretty get this sentence. So how come states are, so if it's immutable, so it can recognize. Okay, so let us look how you can update arrays held in state in React. So one of the most common mistakes when updating arrays in React state is to directly modify the array using the methods like push, pop, and so on. This method mutates the original array, and React does not allow that. Understand? Because I don't know if React has to keep track of the original array, because if you basically modify and see now, understand why we have to create a new instance. So for example, if let me say like I don't like when it's that long. Voila, that's better. Let me increase the size. There's no way to increase the size. Guys, give me a minute. Maximum. Okay. So basically, if the initial state, the initial variable, let's say initial variable is, let's say, an object, React wants to keep a record, let's say that, a record of the initial variable, of the initial state. I think so. Basically, I don't know why. Maybe because we have sometimes we shall need to use we shall need the record. So that's since since this record is important, we don't have to mutate it in React state. So therefore since we don't have to mutate it in React, and therefore we create a new record, a new instance. So if it's an object in the initial state, that is a new array, object. That's it. So now it's pretty clear. So React relies on a new array reference to detect changes, so directly modifying the array can prevent the component from re-rendering as expected. So here's an example of using push method to add to an array in state which won't work. So basically here's an array, which is an array of object, which is the initial state. Here's the item. Here's a setup function, which helps us to updates the value of the items. So now we have a function. Let's go and look inside the return function. The return function is here. So with a div, then a button, which is the click item. Another button, we have an unordered list that display all the items found in this array of objects. So all the elements basically. So with the help of this item.id, point ID. Why does React does that is because he wants to I think he wants to keep track of the changes. I think that's the reason. So basically let's go on. Now here we have a button, and inside the button we have this event attribute on click using the camel case, and we make this reference. We use the reference to the function add item. So we insert a reference. So this reference is a function. So sorry, this reference says that we have to go to this function. So whenever this button is clicked, we go to this function. So this function is an arrow function, and inside the function we create a new item by increasing the ID length. Increase by changing the ID, changing the name of the item. So let me just go like this so that we can changing the name of the item. And what we do is that we push the new item. So inside the object, inside the array, push the new item inside the array. This modifies the original array, yes, and React will not detect it and set the items. So basically what happens here is that we create a new element, push the new element in array. Let's say not array, let's say initial state, and after that set. So this set item will help us in the commit stage. We are talking about this trigger, renders, and render stage and commit stage. So set item help us to display the change. Let me just in the commit stage. So basically that's what's happening, and that then it won't work. So if you click the add button, nothing appears in the user's interface. It might also be tempted to remove items that's the same thing. So basically anything that changes the array, the initial state, the array, it won't work because states are immutable in React. So to update an object, an array in state, the key is to create a new array, do a new array, do your operation and pass that to React rather than mutate the existing array. Okay. So because it's a new array, React will know that the state has to be changed and trigger every render. So does it every render. So basically we come back here to our state stuff. So basically there's this trigger and commit, trigger render and commit stage. So calculate changes so basically it will calculate change in the virtual DOM, update only the parts that need to be changed in a real DOM. So that's what we're talking about here. So here is the modified array. Here's a modified array. Sorry, here's a modified solution. Add item const. So we create a new object. So now we use array destructuring to add the new item. So basically we create a new array. So this is a new array that we created. And this new array will come and replace the old array. So the initial state as it. So we use this arrow function. Previous item reference is a reference to the item object here, to the item array here. So here's it, and it basically takes the item array and destructure it element by element and insert it inside a new function, a new array, sorry, and at the end we insert a newly created element. So that's what they're telling us here. Same thing for remove element, and here's the full code. So now let us go to the question. Which of the following is the correct way to update state and add new items to an array? The correct way to update state and add new items to an array. This one is wrong. Copy. This one is tempting, but let us analyze everything. So set items, set items. So it's between set items and this one. This one is also wrong because it does not represent the syntax. So basically I don't really know if I try to do it with new array, because new array really simply tells that we have to create a new array. I don't think it's also correct because I don't think the syntax is correct. But another way we want to create an array. So one of the way to create an array, we use the keyword new followed by array and equals to this, see. And basically we always store the array in a function, in a variable, sorry. So according to what we read, the correct answer should be this one. Why should you not directly modify an array in React state? It automatically clears the array. Okay. It adds unwanted duplicate to the array. Okay. It causes error in the component. It prevents React from detecting changes. Okay, that's the reason. So basically I was saying that because it has to keep track. Where is it here? That was my thing here. I was saying that React has to keep track of the old record, which is wrong. What React does is that we want that React should detect the new changes. So basically, instead of modifying the array, the only way to make sure that React knows that a change has occurred, we have to create a new array and set it as initial state. So which method is best for removing an item in an array? Best is best because spice help us to remove an item in an array. Pop also. Filter is just like, nope, React state. So I think that I skipped this part in the text. So let's just throw a look to it. Yes, it remove item. They use filter. Okay. If you want to remove something from an array, you can use filter method, which returns a new array after filtering out whatever you want to remove. Create an array. Create a new array by copying all the items in the existing array, held in state, and then add new item at the end, which increments the ID and the item object. So spread operator. That's it. Okay. I think that the right answer for the last question is filter. Seriously, if I had not read this text, I would have said purple spice. But filter, it's important to know that filter. So because filter creates a new array based on the conditions that have been that was stated. So basically filter works with condition. Let me just show you guys. So the condition here, for example here, the condition here is that the item ID of the previous array should not be equals to the ID of this setter, of this remove item, sorry. So this ID should not be equals to the item ID. That's the condition. And when this thing is true, then we take the element that respect that condition and store it in a new array. So that's how basically it's working. So guys, we are done with this lecture of working with state and responding to events in React. So let me answer questions. Okay, there's no question. Okay, 9 people. Let us go and do the workshop. So let's see this toggle message. Click. Okay, now let us continue with this React. Now we have to implement this show message stuff and so on and so forth. So let us do the thing here. Okay, what's the first step? So now let me just put this here. So guys, if you're still watching, you have any question to ask, let me know so that we can move forward. If you ask, let me know. Okay. Okay, now let's do it. Nice. I think that I have now a pretty good understanding of React state, basic level, let me say that. So in the previous lecture, you learn about states and how it works, blah 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 blah. Okay, to begin, return a div element. Return a div element. So we return a div element. So like this div element. element inside the toggle app component with ID. So ID toggle container. Okay, you're saying that I have a problem with my mic. Let me check it, please. Aman, thank you. Echo. It's not good here. I think that the mic is working perfectly. So I have the live here. I've just increased the volume. So, but I don't know what you're talking about, Aman. So maybe you give me some details more, or maybe may help you. But I think the mic is working. So now let us continue, and we're done here. Check code. Okay, this is proven ID called. I knew. I wanted to write class name here. What do I write class name? Let me see. Still a problem. What did it ask me again here to do? What's wrong? What do they mean by ID? Okay, I know. Okay. I'm always making this error with toggle. I'm always writing with double O instead of double G. Gay, sorry. And yeah, I'm supposed to use ID. Still wrong. Okay, it worked. Okay, let's go on to the next step. The next step is inside. Sorry. So the next step is inside the toggle container element, add a button element with the ID with an ID called toggle button, and just copy this first. The button text should say message. Okay. Sorry. Next step, below your button element, add a paragraph with ID, with an ID of message and the text of I love freeCodeCamp. Me too. Let's say I love the ID is good. Next one. There's a problem here. Okay. Okay, let's go on to the next step. So now that they want to use state like this. Okay, so use state returns an array of two values. The first value is a current state and the second value is a set function. Okay, create a new state variable and a set function called is visible and is set is visible. So set is visible and is equals to use state. Let me check the import here. Do I how do they okay. Use state. Okay. Remember to use the array structuring syntax as shown in the example. Then assign the useState hook to the initial value of false. Okay. We are done. Let us move on to the next step. So now that you have created the isVisible state, it's time to start using it. So in prior lectures, you learn about inline conditional rendering, blah 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 blah. So I'm talking about this here. In this example, the paragraph element will always show if the message is toothy. So remember, toothy refers to any value that evaluates through in a Boolean context. So for this step, you will need to conditionally render the paragraph element. When done correctly, you should see the paragraph is no more visible. So here's a preview. Okay, message and so on. So I understand now. You're telling me to the preview. It's a common pattern to use logical and okay. So they want me to make sure to render conditionalities paragraph stuff. So let me try. What's the condition? There's nothing here. So to check if it's visible. Normally I think that I can do it like this. Just write it like this. This guy and put this guy here, and the total value is visible. Okay. Now they say one way to show the paragraph text is to change the initial value for the useState hook. Change the current state value from false to true if and show and you should see the paragraph text now displaying on the screen. One way to show the paragraph, okay, telling me okay, two action, okay. Let us continue. Why that work? It's not very practical to manually update the initial value of the useState for the useState hook to toggle the event for the paragraph text. Update the initial value for the useState hook from true to false. In the next few steps, you will build out the button functionality that will handle the toggle visibility for the paragraph text. Okay. Basically, they're telling me to build a function that will handle the visibility. Let me think. Let me say const handle visibility. So let me say arrow function. Let me use some arrow function like Okay, so we want to update the initial value from true to false. Okay, so set is visible. Set is visible. Visibility. So set is visible. Like this. Inside it, we create an arrow function. So this is previous. What we should do here is that we say previous. Now we set previous equals to false. Does it? I think that's right now. Okay. There's a problem here. Still a problem. So what's wrong? Okay, I don't need this. You should set views is correct. So let me think again. Ask ChatGPT. I understand now. Oh, scheiße, I didn't. So false. Okay. That is I'm already dead. Let me finish this thing and shut down the live. Let's start by creating a function. Handle toggle visibility. True. Okay. Inside, use the set visible to update the state. So normally like this. Set is visible. This visible. Change now the state. Visible is visible. Since it's a boolean. Okay. Let's go to the next step. Not a use effect. Not a use effect was added to the call function when the component. You will learn more about use effect in the future lectures. Now you will be below this code, lock the isVisible state to the console, open up to the console, and you will notice the value is not what you expect. Okay, I think so. Console. Is visible. So if you look at the console, you might have been surprised to see the value false instead of true. This is happening because React does not immediately update the state. The state will only be updated next render cycle. It's a common mistake for developers new to React to place console statement right after the set function. So this is something to be aware of when you are building out your React application. Since the console is no longer needed, remove it from your function. Okay. Okay. Now they're telling me to put this on click event. The name of the function is handle visibility. Handle visibility. Good. Almost done. So now they're telling us to do something else, to do some conditional rendering. Oh, I'm doing that. It would be nice to dynamically show the words, or hide message based on the visibility state. Earlier, you reviewed how to blah blah blah. Here's an example of using the ternary operator. Ternary operator. For the last step of this workshop, use a ternary operator to conditional display, hide, or show in the message. Okay. So when is visible false, the button text. That's it. That's wrong. Show, hide, show, hide. What's wrong here? When is visible is false, the button text will show message. Okay, maybe it should be. Let's see. Show. Hide. Ah, sometimes this thing is frustrating. So guys, we are done. So next time we shall do this build a color picker, understanding effects on React, effects and referencing value in React. Maybe this workshop, so and we shall do this review, take the quiz, working fonts, support. So basically that is it. So if you guys have any questions to ask, listening because I'm about to stop the live. If not, thank you for watching.